So we learned in Chapter 1 that the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist perspectives were opposing ones. The Federalists supported the idea of a strong central government, and the Anti-Federalists liked the idea of having more power in state governments and individuals. Southerners, because they were farmers, tended to be Anti-Federalists. So Southerners and Anti-Federalists didn't like Hamilton's plan because it favored merchants over farmers. Okay, merchants lived mostly in the North and the farmers were mostly Southerners. And the Southerners and the farmers didn't like having to contribute to a Federalist government to make it stronger. They didn't like having to pay taxes and money to support a strong central government. So Hamilton pacifies them by promising that over 10 years they will move the national capital south, okay, into what is now, of course, Washington, D.C. Hamilton used implied powers to start the national bank and national currency. These implied powers are suggested in Article 1, Section 8 and Clause 18 of the Constitution. Let me read you exactly what that says. It says, "To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States, in any department or officer thereof." Okay? So the idea of implied powers is that powers that aren't specifically identified in the Constitution may be used by the federal government when it is necessary. Moving on to the Whiskey Rebellion, this was really the first time that the power of the federal government was exercised. Okay, and what happened was the rural farmers who made whiskey disliked the excise taxes, the sin taxes. Why do you think that's the case? Think about that for a minute. Write it in your notes. So the rural farmers intimidated tax collectors that came to their farms to collect these excise taxes during this time. Okay, and the Whiskey Rebellion was essentially a revolt of these farmers who decided that they didn't want to pay the excise taxes anymore. Hamilton decided that this could not be tolerated, and he sent in the national militia, and the farmers basically disappeared by the time the federal troops got there. The rebellion was blamed on something called the Democratic Societies, which were clubs, mostly groups of farmers who got together in kind of a semi-organized fashion to protest the strong federal government and the taxes that were being imposed on them. So Washington and Hamilton, who were Federalists, denounced the Democratic Societies. Think about the word denounced for a minute and what that would mean in terms of the Federalists. Jefferson and Madison defended the Democratic Societies. Okay, so they supported the idea. They felt that they were justified in their complaints. Although the Founding Fathers did not believe in political parties, these two factions, the Anti-Federalists versus the Federalists, created these two political parties. The first political party was the Democrat-Republican Party, and it was formed from the Democratic Societies, which were led by Jefferson and Madison. And then there was the Federalist Party who opposed them. This was led by Adams and Hamilton. So this is kind of a breakdown what it would look like. The Federalists, those who supported a strong central government, Hamilton and Adams, versus the Democratic Republicans, led by Jefferson and Madison. Okay, and they supported strength in state governments and in individuals. So we have the situation of Northerners versus Southerners. So you have Northerners who are often merchants. They're benefiting from taxes that are imposed on farmers. And so they tend to be Federalists, supporting a strong federal government. And then the Southerners, who favor Democrat Republicans. They would prefer that the states made decisions for their groups of people. Most voters credited the Federalists, however, for creating the Constitution and increased prosperity. So a lot of people gave the Federalists credit for setting up and establishing a stable central government. So we're going to stop there for this particular video, and we'll pick up in a few minutes with the next one. See you then.